So I'll let the UN speak to any revised number that it is assessing. Our urge has been clear that every step possible needs to be taken to protect civilians and adhere to international humanitarian law to prevent further loss of life. Candidly, and any loss of life, particularly of innocent civilians, is tragic. It's heartbreaking and unacceptable to us.
But the U.S. does not have its own estimate.
This is something we've talked about before. There is not, aside from the Gazan Ministry of Health, there is not another metric or count out there when it comes to the deaths that have transpired in Gaza.
Yeah. Just a caution, this report attributed to the UN seems to be false. Just so you know.
Pardon me, Said?
This report attributed to the UN seems to have no veracity.
I will let the UN speak to that. Again,
I'm just bringing that up so people are aware.
Thanks for your clarification. Go ahead in the back. On Gaza?
On Gaza, yeah.
Go ahead.
You say there are instances where the Israelis have acted which are not consistent with international humanitarian law, but you can make no definite conclusion. A lot of people will be asking, where's the gap? Why can't you make a definitive conclusion? And is it a political gap rather than a legal gap?
It is absolutely not a political gap.
We are continuing to listen in as the State Department briefing continues in Washington, D.C. Again, the focus right now is the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas and also the growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. On the upper right-hand side of your screen, we're also continuing to follow an event happening live out of Tel Aviv, where hundreds of people have gathered at Hostages Square to mark their Independence Day. On the lower right-hand side of your screen, that is a live look at the Israel-Gaza border, again, as we are learning that Hamas has regrouped in northern Gaza, leading to fighting with Israeli troops right there. We are going to step away for our final 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinn, and thank you for making Live Now from Fox part of your day. We appreciate it. Time right now is 1:53 Eastern, 10:53 Pacific. After the break, my colleague Mike Page is going to be in the hot seat to guide you for the next several hours on all of your live events, top stories, and headlines. We'll be right back.
Fires last year were in places like Quebec, back into Ontario, and that area of high pressure just pumped it down. This, for the time being, the worst of this is across the western part of the state, British Columbia, and points east from there. So we'll have to watch to see how that progresses, Michael, as we move forward through fire season.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough go of things. Friends in the Twin Ports, Duluth, Minnesota, toward Bemidji, up toward Minneapolis, St. Paul through this evening. It is going to certainly be a evening that is going to bear monitoring with our AQI, that's for sure. Ian Oliver, thank you. I appreciate your time.
You bet.
Well, severe weather season is far from over. More than 50 million people are in the path of storms today. We'll time that out for you. But first, a look at the forecast in your backyard.
Welcome back, everyone, to Live Now from Fox as we continue to roll on right here. You can see the Dow down about 80 points in the red. We'll continue to take a look at it for you here, as always, throughout the trading day. Hi, everyone. Mike Pace here. Thanks again for joining us as we try to bring you as many different live feeds, top stories, and remember, when breaking news happens, we have you covered as well. We do have a White House briefing coming up at the top of the hour that we will be bringing to you. We are also keeping an eye. We'll have some brief remarks from Attorney General Merrick Garland and the FBI Director Christopher Wray at this Election Threats Task Force meeting. We'll be bringing you the comments right off the top as soon as they get going. But in the meantime, let's go out to the State Department briefing, still live right now.
Not at all saying that Gaza is not in crisis and it is not a humanitarian major area of concern. But these are two very different and distinct circumstances, and the actors in both of these situations could not be more different. And again, a big piece of this is that we have never seen the Russian Federation try and hold itself accountable, to hold its security services accountable, to bring perpetrators within their own system to justice. And we have seen and we have heard from our Israeli partners that they are doing so.
Sorry, one more quick question on this. So was this an independent U.S. investigation to decide whether or not Israel had broken international humanitarian law, or was this a U.S. investigation aided by the Israelis?
The Israelis were not involved in the production of the United States' National Security Memorandum.
That's not an answer to the question.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I think there's probably a couple other questions on Gaza. Go ahead.
On Friday, the UNRWA shut down its office in occupied East Jerusalem because of 2 Israeli arson attacks. The Israeli police and fire departments didn't come out to put out the fire. It took a long time for them to come out, and the employees of UNRWA had to put out the fire while Israeli mobs were outside chanting with sticks and throwing rocks at the UNRWA employees. Israeli police said that they couldn't prosecute because it was apparent to them that these were minors.
There is one new severe thunderstorm warning for Florida.
These arsons. And they said that according to Israeli law, they do not prosecute minors. Do you have anything on this? I have a follow-up to this, but are you aware of this?
I'm not aware of this report, and I would defer to local officials and authorities to speak to this. What I can say is that any kinds of actions like these certainly are not helpful for peace and stability in the region. They take us further away.
There is one new severe thunderstorm warning for
Texas. Which has continued to be this administration's goal. I will say UNRWA continues to be an important humanitarian player in the region and a key distributor of humanitarian aid, and one that does important work. But this is a largely localized issue. I don't have anything.
Well, it's UNRWA, but now on the other hand, the government of Israel has a policy of detaining minors, Palestinian minors, in the West Bank. Between 400 and 600 are the estimates every single year. And my question is, given this difference, which many international humanitarian or human rights organizations say that Israel is an apartheid state and is practicing apartheid in the West Bank and in Gaza and in Israel itself, how does the United States not acknowledge this apartheid when it's very, very obvious that there are 2 different treatments of minors?
When it comes to detention, we have been clear with our partners in Israel that they need to abide by international humanitarian law, and human rights need to be protected when it comes to its detainees. But the decision of prosecution or not, or how our partners in Israel or the PA or otherwise, or any entity, how they choose to enforce their local laws, I'm just not going to get into that.
But I mean, it's a consistent practice. It's not something that happened one time or two. Over years, many years. It's very consistent and obvious. And
Again, I'm not going to speak or comment on this specifically. What we have been clear about is that actions like these, they detract from our ultimate goal of peace and stability in the region and getting us towards a two-state solution.
Right along the I-37 corridor, that's a big severe thunderstorm warning with some pretty sizable hail, upwards of 1 inch in diameter and 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. But look at all of that lightning. Just incredible. Literally over 1,300 lightning strikes in a 15-minute period. So this is a severe thunderstorm warned storm that's basically racing toward the east along I-10. And then this, too, another severe thunderstorm warning. We hop, skip, and jump on over to Panama City, Florida. Panama under the gun right now, too. That's a big line of heavy showers and storms. And this particular line is showing rotation. In fact, although you'll never hear of a tornado warning per se over water, you may hear about what are called water spouts. And I wouldn't be too surprised if we had a couple of water spouts here just off the coast of Panama City, because there is some significant twisting and turning that we're seeing just offshore. So now is certainly not the time to jump into your boat in Panama City and head out on the water. All of that energy is racing down State Highway Route 98 toward Mexico Beach and Port St. Joe. So the threat exists not only today, but also notice that the Storm Prediction Center has elevated that risk through the panhandle of Florida, South Georgia toward Valdosta, and then northern Florida, Tallahassee included in that, on Tuesday. That's a new uptick in what we've seen since the last hour. So again, through the I-10 corridor today from Houston to New Orleans, I want you to be on the lookout for heavy showers and strong to severe storms as waves of energy continue to press from west toward the east, again bringing with it that potential for damaging winds, large hail, and perhaps even a few isolated tornadoes. And meanwhile, the Lone Star State of Texas just getting slashed with even more flash flooding, unfortunately. Now, just look at the flooding here. This was out of Cleveland, Texas over the weekend, where literally residents had to jump into their boats to get around town. Now, the problem is that more rain is on the way and being squeezed out of the atmosphere. We have back-to-back storms that could drop as much as 3 to 5 inches of rain from Texas through Florida. In fact, in College Station, Texas, that's between Houston, picked up a surplus of over 11 inches of rain since January the 1st. You look at Texas, and not only on Monday do we have that flash flood threat, that's today, but also on Wednesday and on Thursday. So the only real day that you can catch a brief break is going to be on Tuesday. But even on Tuesday, parts of the panhandle of Florida will be under the gun. So what we have going on right now, all the green boxes that you're seeing here from East Texas through parts of southwest Georgia, those are flood watches that have been posted. And here's the reason why. Today, tomorrow, again, brief lull on Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday, the end of the week, there's going to be that opportunity, and even into the weekend, the opportunity of seeing rounds of rain. Now, don't get me wrong, in the month of May, we love seeing rain, right? We have the April showers, bring May flowers, the whole 9 yards, right? This is spring weather is what is very typical this time of the year. But what's a little atypical is when you start to see your monthly average. And look at Tallahassee, by the way. In the month of May, they typically pick up on average 1/4 inches of rain. Well, the forecast just in the next few days is 3 to 5 inches of rain. That's way over and above what they typically pick up. And it's not just east of, that's over 20 inches of rain that they've picked up since the beginning of the month. So Lufkin, Texas, 16 where plus territory. That's a ton, and that's the reason why we're monitoring that threat for ongoing flood concerns throughout the day today and this week. An EF tornado caused damage right outside of Pittsburgh Metro. This was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and a church in Finleyville took a direct hit. Now, the building's roof ripped right off during prayer service. Is past Ken Barner immediately jumped into action, and he helped escort all 100 people down to the church's basement. That's where they took shelter until the tornado passed. Ken described Fox Weather this morning.
Yes, we were totally caught by surprise. There had been no warning in our area that there was a tornado weather. There was like an hour and a half north that we were expecting tornado, but we were used to that up in that area in Lawrence County. We're down here in Washington County on the southern side of Pittsburgh, and we had 93 people here in the building. We were getting ready for our regular service. We have a Saturday night service every week at 6 p.m. My wife was actually up on the stage leading songs. She was in the middle of the third song. Power jumped, and you could just hear this crazy noise outside. And we went right into action, and we started to evacuate. We actually had a few windows in the auditorium blow out, and glass just went all over. Glass went over one of my associates, knocked him to the floor. But amazingly, nobody was hurt.
Ken, how did you get everybody out? You're talking about I assume you were in the sanctuary at the time with the service, and you had to get everybody to a safe spot. How did you know, first of all, to do that, and how long did it take?
You know, I think God helps those who can't help themselves, right? You know,
Right.
God helps us in the time least expected. So I believe God just gave me that moment. That started to happen, and I said, we are going downstairs in our basement. We have a children's area where I know I've been part of this church for my lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so downstairs is cinder block, and I said, we've got to get down there where we are safe. And so down the stairwells, we had a few stairwells, and we started to move them. The wind was on the side of the building, and I said, well, let's all go down the left side because I don't want them to get shattered with the glass. Mm-hmm. And at the speed of light. And so Saturday night is one of our smaller congregations that gather. We gather on Saturday at 6 and Sunday at 9:30 and 11. So I'm just thankful this wasn't on when I had only about 350, 400 people here. So we were just moving into action. And I just believe that God led us. And I can only tell you the protection of the hand of God was on us.
Wow, just absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, in parts of Florida, this, of course, in the state capital, just days after torrential storms hit the capital city over the weekend, this new threat that is reinvigorated after 3 tornado touchdowns slammed the city on Friday. 2 of those tornadoes were rated an EF1. 4-mile-per-hour wind gusts also being reported at Florida A&M University. That's the highest recorded wind gust in Tallahassee history. And check out your screen, power crews working around the clock because more than 20,000 customers at one point remained without power. It's a massive transformers. Over 330 utility poles were damaged or snapped. And the mayor says that they're having to rebuild, not necessarily repair. Now, the grid is the hardest hit in some of these communities. Here's what it looked like on Friday morning, by the way. This was just before 7 a.m., where the right was just I-10. We had not 1, but we had 2, 3, and 4 notches in what we call our correlation coefficient. Hey, listen, there's debris being lofted in the atmosphere. Lots of that green next to the red just means that there's a tight couplet. And again, of power outages going, cleanup efforts, of course, on the way, especially on Thursday and on Friday. And it was a historic week for those that were watching the skies. Millions of Americans got their first ever look at the Northern Lights. We'll show you just how far, but first, a look at the forecast in your area.
New 2024, your silver passport to travel the world. The 5 most popular pure silver coins on Earth in one set. 5 countries, 5 pure silver coins. Travel the globe without leaving home. Your excursion includes visits to the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and South. This is the must-have silver collection. Each of these silver coins are backed by their respective governments for silver weight, purity, and legal tender value. And now, for the first time, the Silver Passport set has 2 coins featuring King Charles up with the 2024 Great Britain Silver Britannia, featuring the portrait of King Charles III, minted in pure silver at the Royal Mint. For our next stop, we have the 2024 Canadian Silver Maple Leaf, bearing the effigy of King Charles III for the first time ever, struck in pure silver at the Royal Canadian Mint. Next, 2024 China Silver Panda, a collector's favorite, known for their heartwarming one-year-only designs. And we have the 2024 South African minted in pure silver. And to finish up your journey, the best-selling silver coin on the planet, the United States of America 2024 Silver Eagle, featuring the iconic Lady Liberty, demonstrating beauty and independence, and the Bald Eagle, representing the strength and freedom of America, officially struck at the United States Mint in pure silver. We've done the work for you. Call now and you're guaranteed to receive the 5 most popular silver coins on Earth, all in brilliant uncirculated condition. This is a limited time special offer. Save $50. That's for 20% off. Call now to learn more. Plus, if you order now, you'll receive a free bonus presentation case, a Silver Passport information guide, and free shipping. Call now to secure your 2024 Silver Passport set before they are gone. Don't delay.
Call 1-888-201-7142 now.
And we are back now on America's Weather Center as you look live at Crestview, Florida. Crestview right along I-10, just north and east of not only Fort Walton Beach, but also just north and due north of Destin, Florida. And boy, look at that rain coming down quick and in a hurry. And unfortunately, there is not only a risk for some flash flooding, but also for strong to severe storms, not only there, but Pensacola, where of course our camera lens is just soaking wet because of the storms that are moving through as we speak. And note the elevation in our risk zone. It's a 3 out of 5, just meaning that from San Antonio to Houston across I-10.
There is one new tornado warning for Florida.
This is going to be the stretch of real estate today where you need to be on guard. Over 50 million Americans are in the danger zone today, again, from Houston through San Antonio, Austin to Baton Rouge and Mobile, Alabama. Here's what the timeline on things look like. Notice that those storms really along the I-10 corridor just kind of sit there and they're lingering. A cold front. They're just south of a warm front. So this is a warm of this. It's a pocket right here. And note that we have another wave from Austin through Houston that's going to blaze through during the afternoon, the evening, parts of the overnight hours. So New Orleans around 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. Mobile, same sort of story. Although it's raining right now, we have several waves of rain and storms that are going to move on through, with a few of those storms producing not only significant wind gusts, but large hail and perhaps even a few tornadoes. And you can see the regions here that are highlighted. Again, that damaging wind threat, about a 3 out of 5. Hail, I think the biggest concern for that's going to be back in the Lone Star State of Texas from San Antonio to Houston. But again, flooding, a major concern throughout the next, say, several days through at least Tuesday. So all day today and then tomorrow from Waco, Alexandria, Baton Rouge, down around New Orleans, Lake Pontchartrain, and then toward Pensacola. You can see that brighter green box indicative of a flash flood warning that's going on. See that highlighted shade of yellow there? Again, that's an intensification. That's an upping of the ante, if you will, with our chances for flooding from the Big Easy through Mobile, Dolphin Island, and then, of course, Panama City, Florida. So watch out as you're hitting those roadways. How much rain are we expecting? And let me zoom in and highlight this. That red that you're seeing indicates that we could be talking about upwards of 5 to 8 inches of rain by the time everything is said and done through this. And Canadian wildfire smoke is dripping south and has moved into the Twin Cities, where Minnesotans are facing the worst air quality as we speak in the country. The current AQI in Minneapolis, by the way, is 185. To put that into perspective for you, if you're outside or you're exposed to outdoor air for more than 24 hours, that's equivalent to smoking 5.6 cigarettes. So again, it is not healthy out there. A quick look at Glacier National Park in Montana, right on the border there of Canada. And again, the skies in the background were a little murky. Here's where we are in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Again, our current AQI is unhealthy due to the wildfire smoke from Canada drifting United States, and it's unhealthy, just meaning that you want to limit your time outside, especially if you have asthma or any sort of upper respiratory illnesses. I think of COPD, etc. And what we're anticipating and what we've seen really over the past couple of hours, since at least 11 o'clock last night, while you were tucking yourself into bed, and then through this morning and now through about lunchtime in Minneapolis, St. Paul, we have been unhealthy. So watch our AQI. The good news is that by tomorrow we're expecting for our air quality to look a little bit better. But right now, though, 46 active fires, over 500,000 acres burned as we speak. And again, that smoke from Canada, unfortunately, drifting into the United States. So right now, the current drought monitor in Canada just showing you that it's very dry. It's parched from Calgary toward Edmonton. And again, that's just allowing for all of the plants, the vegetation to burn, and that allows for that smoke, as we mentioned, to drift into places like Duluth, Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and through the land of 10,000 lakes. So let's just make sure that if you do have any upper respiratory issues, that you are closing those windows. And let me just say this, that N95 mask, you thought that we were done with it, well, might come into handy throughout the day today and perhaps early tomorrow. Well, how about this? People all across the world could see a beautiful color in the sky this past weekend, from the shades of green, the pinks, the purples, the red. That was all from the northern lights this weekend. The aurora borealis was vibrant, and again, it was across the United States and reached as far south as not only Alabama, but Florida. This being the strongest geomagnetic storm to hit the Earth in decades, and it came with absolutely stunningly gorgeous views. Now, Fox Weather correspondent Katie Byrne joined us just outside of Philadelphia in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And Katie, I'll be honest with you, I was out there over the weekend. My eyes were turned toward the heavens. I didn't see anything in New York. I hope that you had a much better view than I did.
You know what, Michael? We didn't get a good view here in the Philly suburbs either, as well in Philadelphia. So a lot of people are feeling FOMO today. I think they were hoping, okay, we couldn't see it Friday, we couldn't see it Saturday. Maybe Sunday will be our last chance. But unfortunately for us in the Philly area, we just had too many clouds in the sky. And it seems like the further away you were from city lights, the more likely you were to see those beautiful northern lights. But obviously, this was all brought by an intense solar storm that hasn't been experienced in decades. That's why so many people were so excited for this opportunity. It could be once in a lifetime, or maybe once every 20 years, because that's the last time we had a level 5 geomagnetic storm like this for us here in the United States. But when you look at some of these stunning visuals, you can see that this was really unforgettable for so many people. People who live from Seattle to Florida caught the purple, green, yellow, and pink hues of the northern lights lighting up the sky. And those best viewing spots really seem to be far away from city lights.
You never know where it's going to pop up at, really. So we're just kind of lucky that we're getting such a good view of it.
We've never seen the aurora borealis before, and so I thought, hey, if I can see it from here, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, those people are watching from California, but people saw it all over the place, all over the country, all over the world. And this all happened because of a massive sunspot, the width of 17 Earths spewing solar flares, according to NOAA. NOAA warned that a level 5 solar storm like this can cause power grid problems and issues with high-frequency communications. Elon Musk did mention Saturday that Starlink satellites were under a lot of pressure, but held up against the storm. And we checked in with FEMA. They said they didn't have any reports of significant impacts from the solar storm, but they're going to keep checking to see if that changes or anything develops in the coming days, because we know that even after the storm ends, it's possible that the GPS satellites and ground receivers could get mixed up or lost. They could lose their signal. But NOAA says that there are so many satellites that any outages like that wouldn't last very long, Michael.
Okay, that's great to hear. It sounds like, Katie, you and I may need to take a trip to Iceland in the winter time so we can maybe actually have a better chance on seeing the Aurora Borealis then, right?
I am in. I am so in.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Katie Byrne for us live in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, with not seeing the Northern Lights, but we're going to work on that this upcoming winter. Katie, thank you so much. Well, it was a really miraculous sight to see, so rare for the Northern Lights to extend all the way down into not only Texas, but Florida. And it was an amazing opportunity for those who were actually able to get out and see it. So if you're thinking to yourself, all right, I'm in the United States, I'm in northern Maine, maybe you're joining us from Caribou. Well, problem is that right now, the current auroras are way far north. We're talking like Fairbanks, Alaska, Nome, Alaska is where you'd have to head to, or perhaps even Iceland. You can see it up there, because over the weekend, this yellow line was actually way down over here. So unfortunately, no sort of projections to see any auroras in the United States, at least over the next couple of days. But a really cool feature when you have that energy that just pulses off the sun, and that pulse of energy hits Earth's magnetosphere. And then basically what ends up happening is in the North Pole and the South Pole, here and here, that's where those particles begin to flow to, and that's what causes just the vibrant colors that we had an opportunity to enjoy over this past weekend. Now, again, unfortunately, right now we are not expecting any sort of solar weather, so hope that you were able to get out there and enjoy what we did see, because this weekend's level 5 geomagnetic storm was the first again to hit Earth since October 2023 or October 2003. Now, the storm, as Katie mentioned, did knock out power in several different spots. Included in that was Sweden, and it actually damaged some electrical transformers as far south as South Africa. That, of course, due to all of the energy around the South Pole. Really interesting stuff. Well, heading back to our big weather story today, those storms are just not letting up for parts of the south. With more severe weather on the way, we have a tornadic danger in here, along with a flash flood risk. We'll talk about it. That's coming up next.
I'm Fox Weather's Stephen Morgan, and today we're talking about the Northern Lights. These are also known as Aurora Borealis. You see them in pictures, movies, anywhere scenic. These vibrant colors dance across the night sky, giving off these gorgeous views. So what causes this majestic light show? It starts with a solar flare, when charged particles are released from the sun and interact with Earth's magnetic field. Let's call this the solar wind. That wind ultimately enters Earth's atmosphere at the poles, where
there is one new severe thunderstorm warning for Texas.
Oxygen and nitrogen. Red and green auroras come from the solar wind reacting with oxygen. Meanwhile, the blue and pink ones are due to nitrogen. The northern lights are typically faint, so they're hard to see in big cities. Head away from those lights to where it's darker. Now boldly go, if you get the chance, and see them for yourself. Know your Fox weather.
Gilt has the designers that get your heart racing. Dior, Valentino, and more. All at insider prices, new every day. The looks you want are yours, at up to 70% off, but only if you act fast. Because 1 second they're here, and the next, they're gone. Designer sales at up to 70% off. Shop Gilt.com today.
That's $78.29.
Oh, I've only got $50. Take out the cheese puffs and the broccoli. I mean, who likes broccoli?
I don't. Only $22.87 to go.
It would be faster with the Empower app. Empower Cash Advance gives you up to $250 instantly. No late fees, interest, or credit checks.
I've got money. Keep the cheese puffs, but leave out the broccoli.
Get Empower Cash Advance from $10 to $250 instantly. Download the Empower app today.
Whether because of discomfort, lack of mobility, your lifestyle, or occupation, you sit inactively way too many hours a day. Introducing Ellipse, the premium quality automatic seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation without physical strain or impact.
It is so quiet that none of my coworkers even know I'm using it.
Strengthen and tone your legs. Increase your mobility, flexibility, and balance. Plus, stimulate healthy circulation.
My joints feel better, my knees feel better, my back feels better. It makes me feel stronger, too.
Perfect for home therapy. Whisper quiet to use while you work.
My circulation is moving, I'm burning calories, and it makes me feel energetic.
Call now and order Ellipse, the seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation. Call and get upgraded to the Deluxe Bundle. Get the faster motor or 5 miles of steps per hour, the step counter, the sport mat, and wireless remote. Call now.
And we're back now in America's Weather Center. No rest for our friends down south. Yeah, most of that severe weather that we're seeing stretches from Texas all the way through the Gulf Coast, with tornado watches being issued from Youngstown through Tallahassee, Florida, down to Perry, Florida, and Cross City. And it's until 7 p.m. this evening. And unfortunately, it's not just a tornado watch that we're tracking for the Panhandle of Florida, also a number of severe thunderstorm watches from Austin, Texas, through Lake Charles, Louisiana. That runs through this afternoon and this evening. I want to zero in on an area of interest. This was just allowed to expire, but we had earlier, if you're joining us around parts of Dowling Park, it was a tornado warning for this little cell here. That tornado warning's been allowed to drop, but that same system still moving toward the northeast at about 15 miles per hour, bringing it into Lancaster at about 31 minutes past the top of the hour, but just enough twisting and turning in the atmosphere where, again, the National Weather Service was just saying, hey, let's just keep a close eye on that particular cell in parts of Florida. We head back to parts of southeast Texas where we have a number of severe thunderstorm warnings that you can see here. But what I want to highlight real quick is this bundle of energy that is racing toward one of the largest cities in Texas. That, of course, being Houston, Texas. We're at about 45 minutes past the top of the hour. We're expecting a lot of that rain with all of that lightning to move right in to downtown Houston. So watch for it in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. Back to Florida we go. Still addressing a few severe thunderstorm warnings for Panama City. Interestingly enough, that specific warning does have a little tornado possible tag with it, just meaning that a couple of spin-ups are certainly going to be possible through this afternoon and through this evening as these waves of moisture continue to work from west toward the east. So it's going to be an active evening. If you were thinking about getting a good night's sleep along the I-10 corridor, let me tell you something. It is going to be difficult, not only because of that tornadic threat, but because of the strong gusty winds, the large hail that we're anticipating, and of course, that threat for lots of lightning and thunder. Tomorrow on Tuesday, that threat exists from Panama City through Tallahassee, unfortunately, once again, Jacksonville, and then into southern Georgia, right along the I-75 corridor. So the Georgia-Florida state line, be on the lookout for those strong storms. Timeline early in the morning. Here's where 6 a.m. looks like. Panama City getting smacked again through Tallahassee around the 9 o'clock hour, and then through parts of, say, Jacksonville as we head toward lunchtime. So a lot that we're going to be keeping our eyes on in South Georgia and North Florida. Something else that we're going to be watching very carefully is the Lone Star State of Texas, where unfortunately, man, flooding has just been such a huge concern. You're looking at Livingston, Texas, where literally homes submerged up to the first story of those windows, cars, trucks also being submerged. This was drone video from last week just showing you the sheer devastation that those floodwaters had over just a number of those neighborhoods. And we already have flood alerts that are in effect for over 10 million Americans, mostly along the Gulf Coast. So it means that if a flash flood warning is issued and you get that buzzing alert tone from your Fox weather app on your cell phone, it means that you need to be ready to get to higher ground. If you're told to evacuate, please do so. And just bear in mind, we say it all the time, but never try to drive across a flooded street because of that threat that water can actually carry your vehicle. And unfortunately, we've seen a number of deaths when things like that happen. The majority of drownings because of flash flooding happen in vehicles, and since 1959 through 2019, over 1,000 people in Texas have perished due to flooding. That's the reason why we want you to take these flash flood concerns seriously. Eastern Texas, through the day today, we have a flash flood issue that is going to be in place, and it's not just on Monday. It's on Tuesday in Tallahassee. It's in Dallas, Oklahoma City, and Wichita on Wednesday. Thursday, the Big D of Dallas back in it for time number 2, as well as our friends in Houston, Monroe, Louisiana, and then just on the western edge there of Lake Pontchartrain. We currently have flood alerts that are in effect through Tuesday from East Texas through the I-10 corridor, stretching from Baton Rouge through Pensacola and into Tallahassee. If you encounter flooded roadways, please make sure that you find an alternative route. Look at the timestamp here. Today, tomorrow, Wednesday, perhaps a brief lull, but Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend, there's a ton of moisture along the Gulf Coast that we're going to be fighting through, and it's the reason why
there is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm, a new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
Again, a confirmed tornado on the ground in downtown Conyers. This is a very dangerous and life-threatening weather event. Get into the interior section of your house, away from windows or a basement if you have. And there's the debris right there in the Millstead area near the Rockdale Medical Center. Right. Channel 1 Atlanta.
Pittsburgh, PA, confirming an EF2 tornado ripping through western PA just after 6 p.m. Saturday night. And that twister that you can see on your screen causing extensive damage in Finleyville, a town that sits about a half an hour or so south of Pittsburgh. It's the latest tornado to strike the U.S. after last week's deadly severe weather outbreak. And by the numbers, it was incredible. Over 1,200 severe thunderstorm warnings were issued by local National Weather Service offices. Over 330 tornado warnings were issued in that time frame as well. Look at the state of Missouri and parts of Oklahoma, nearly the entire state, Tennessee included in that. Nearly all chunks of real estate between the 6th and 10th of May were under a warning at one point or another. You look at the number of tornadoes that were reported and we had about 160 that were reported. How many of those were actually confirmed? Well, of the 160, 121 were confirmed tornado touchdowns, and we had monster-sized hail. Look at Johnson City, Texas. This is what we were showing you before. 6 1/4 in diameter sized hail. Just enormous. You look at the wind reports out of this, 84 miles per hour in Crestview, Florida. Incredible. This, by the way, just to look back, this was the size of that hailstone, that 6 1/4 size out of Johnson City. That's what we're talking about. Just enormous. Unfortunately, hail like that and wind like that, 84 miles per hour, as we said in Crestview, Florida, knocking down trees and power lines. Still, multiple people and customers, over 20,000 in the state of Mississippi, still without power. Alabama and into Florida, still fighting through that. And that was after we saw huge tornadoes on Friday in Tallahassee, by the way. This is not one, not two, but 4 indications of debris signatures on a radar that we saw. Unfortunately, Tallahassee just getting beaten and battered with those tornadoes, and cleanup efforts are still underway at this point. Wednesday and on Thursday of this week are really going to be the best days to get out and about, given the fact that has the lowest chances of seeing showers and thunderstorms is going to be on Wednesday and Thursday in Tallahassee. Chance isn't 0, however, but again, that's when our cleanup efforts will begin. And across the ocean we go. Catastrophic flooding, killing more than 300 people in Afghanistan over the weekend. Look at your screen as entire villages were washed away by the waters, with others completely cut off from help. Distraught family members frantically searching for their loved ones. Hundreds still remain trapped in their homes beneath piles of debris and mud. The flash flooding triggered by spring rain and snowmelt. This as the region is still reeling from deadly floods back in March, with heavy rain not letting up over the past several days.
There is one new severe thunderstorm warning for Texas.
Season erupting again, forcing thousands from their homes and prompting air quality alerts for parts of the northern United States. We'll talk more about that, but first, a look at the forecast out your front door.
rather than Israel getting mired in a counterinsurgency campaign that never ends and ultimately saps Israel's strength and vitality.
All right, before the questions come, we are going to take a 2-minute break right here on Live Now from Fox. Stay right here with us.
Way to ensure a strong, secure, Jewish, democratic state of Israel, as well as a future of dignity, security, and prosperity for the Palestinian people.
There is one new special marine warning.
That has multiple elements relating to sequencing of hostages coming out, movement of military capabilities, surging of humanitarian assistance, movement of civilians. All these things are quite detailed, and working through those details is what is going to be necessary to get this across the finish line. We believe there is a framework that both sides could sign up to, and it's really about the specifics of that framework and filling that out that's necessary. Language ends up being on a page, but it is what reflects the implementation of those details. That's what we're working with the parties, both with Israel and with Qatar and Egypt, who are in close touch with the representatives of Hamas, and we'll keep you updated as we drive to the finish line. We are intent and determined to get all of the hostages home. We are intent and determined to produce a ceasefire and hostage deal. We believe we can achieve that. I cannot tell you when. Yeah.
Jake, I want to ask you about Russia, but just first on this topic. In the readout, your call with Israeli officials yesterday, it said that you're going to have this meeting again in person soon. Is your expectation, well, one, when is your expectation that meeting will happen, and do you expect that there won't be a Rafah offensive until that meeting has taken place?
I expect it'll happen in a matter of days, not weeks. We haven't announced a specific date on the calendar, but this isn't going to be long in the future. We're just talking about scheduling so that we can get the teams together, because of course it's not just me meeting my counterpart, it's military intelligence and humanitarian professionals on both sides being a part of that conversation as well. And what I expect is that we will have an opportunity to talk further about the best way to ensure Hamas's defeat everywhere in Gaza, including in Rafah, in the context of that conversation, and that opportunity will still be available to us when we show up for that conversation.
And then Zelensky's advisor said today that these new Russian government appointments, including the defense minister, show that Moscow is going to try to scale up its war effort and reconfigure its economy for its defense needs. Is that your assessment of this shakeup as well?
Look, it's an opaque system. It's run by one man, Vladimir Putin. He calls the shots. He may move around professionals into various roles, but at the end of the day, he seems bound and determined to continue to try to inflict a brutal war of aggression on Ukraine. We'll take whatever comes, support Ukraine alongside a coalition of countries, and see what happens. So I don't have a specific comment on the nature of this change up in their government. I've seen that speculation from the Ukrainians. It's not unreasonable, but I can't draw any conclusions at this point. We'll have to see what unfolds. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. Does the U.S. believe that Sinwar or other top Hamas leaders are hiding in Rafah? And if not, why do the Israeli forces continue to push further into Rafah? What reasons are they giving you?
Look, I've seen the public reporting on this, both in Israeli press and in American press, citing intelligence officials suggesting he's not actually in Rafah. I'm not going to comment from intelligence on intelligence operations from the podium, so I'm afraid I can't go further in trying to answer your question. But it's a reasonable question if, in fact, it were the case that he weren't in Rafah, but I can't confirm that one way or the other from this podium.
What reasons are the Israelis giving for why they continue to push forward in Rafah? And do you get the sense that they're taking the U.S. warning and threat seriously?
Look, I think that they have taken the sustained conversation that we have had with them about how to seek an enduring defeat for Hamas while minimizing civilian harm. I think they have been taking that seriously. We've had multiple rounds of conversations. Professional to professional, president to prime minister. We will continue those conversations. We have been very clear about where we stand, and we've also been clear that we're here to actually offer constructive ideas for how to proceed with this in a way that will ultimately achieve the objective. One of the points I made at the outset that I think bears repeating is that really any military operation, a targeted operation, a larger operation, on the ground or in the air, has got to be connected to a strategic endgame that also answers the question, what comes next? And that's something that we're really bearing in on with the Israeli government, and feel
there is
that
one
there needs
news
to be
severe
more attention
thunderstorm
on that
warning
piece
for
of it,
Texas.
lest we end up in a circumstance where Israel conducts a military operation, kills a bunch of Hamas guys, also creates some harm to innocent civilians caught in the crossfire, and then terrorists come back, as we have seen them come back in Gaza City and Khan Yunis and other places. We want to avoid that outcome. We want an outcome in which the page gets turned from Hamas's terroristic reign over Gaza, and a better future comes for the Palestinian people and for the security of the state of Israel. That's what we're going to keep working through. Yeah.
Thanks, Jay. I know you don't previously haven't wanted to talk about drawing red lines, but Israel is continuing to strike Rafah, and they're continuing to order the evacuation of large numbers of civilians. So how will you assess when it has crossed over into a full-scale offensive from the current, operations that are happening now?
We're watching this very closely, as you are. We're consulting closely with the Israelis. We're collecting our own assessment of what's happening on the ground. The Israeli Defense Forces have indicated to us that the operations they are currently pursuing are targeted. They are not the kind of massive military operation that we have talked about. We'll make our own judgment on that as we see things unfold, and it will be based on a totality of factors. It's not a mathematical formula or a mechanical determination. It's something we will judge based on what we see, and the president will then make his determinations. We have not seen that happen yet. Yes, April.
Jake, you've said some of the most strongest words yet about the Palestinians, protecting them, protecting the innocent civilians, as well as assuring their security and aid. What has your department, the National Security Council, as well as Steve Benjamin, said to Morehouse in the lead up to the president's speech, trying to quell the concerns about protests during his commencement address this weekend?
I have not spoken with the folks at Morehouse, and I'd have to defer to Steve to relay to you what he said to them in their conversations. We're, of course, focused on the policy as it relates to the ongoing war and the situation in the Middle East. I have not been engaged in or involved in the preparations for the president's commencement address.
It's important to get out right now, as there are people who are walking out on college commencement addresses, as people are turning their backs, wearing scarves that represent Palestinians. Is this message important to get out for these upcoming commencement addresses that the president is delivering?
The president called Prime Minister Netanyahu at the beginning of April, more than a month ago, to register his very strong concern about the need to get more humanitarian assistance in, and he put out a strong public statement at that time. So the premise of your question, that I'm now coming to speak about the issue of surging humanitarian assistance or protecting civilians, is not a premise I'm afraid I can accept. The president's been very strong on this. Secretary Blinken has been strong on it, and not just in what they say, but in the work that we are doing with Israel, with Egypt, with the United Nations, and frankly, through our own activities, including airdrops and the work to get this pier in place to begin to surge humanitarian assistance in by sea. And when it comes to the issue of civilian harm and the question of trying to do everything possible to reduce the amount of civilian harm on the Strip, this is something the president has spoken to quite actively over a sustained period of time as well, and is directly engaged with the Israelis on too.
People who are
All right, everyone, and we have one more break to go before the top of the hour, so we'll take that right now. 2-minute break underway right now.
I would say please read the remarks that I just gave to this room today, because I think it tries to lay out.
It's not a flip.
There are 2 new warnings affecting Illinois and Wisconsin.
And we are back here for the White House briefing right here on Live Now from Fox.
Part of it is about the need for us, the United States and our coalition of countries, to surge yet more air defense in so that Ukraine has it. And yes, part of it is about a 6-month delay in being able to get assistance to Ukraine that has put Ukraine in a hole, and we've made no bones about that from this podium. So we have started moving air defense to them. We intend to move more, and by we, I don't just mean the U.S., I mean our whole coalition with the President, Secretary Austin, myself, working day in, day out to coordinate those deliveries and to put Ukraine in a position where it is better able to defend against what Russia is throwing at them, and what they are throwing at them is quite considerable. Yeah.
Follow up on that. Can you quantify how quickly are the new packages of military assistance arriving on the battlefield in Ukraine, and if the U.S. is confident that they'll arrive in time for the Ukrainians to be able to fend off advances in Kharkiv and other regions?
The same day that the law took effect, now 2-3 weeks ago, the president signed out $1 billion package. Some of that equipment is already on the battlefield. On Friday, he signed out another package. Some of that equipment will get onto the battlefield this week. Now, some of it has a longer lead time in terms of our ability to ship it, organize it, and get it in. So I don't want to suggest that all $1 billion worth of equipment is on the battlefield. But what you will see is a steady flow week by week. It's not like we've got to wait well out into the future before stuff starts getting delivered. And we are going to have another, what we call PDA, Presidential Drawdown Authority package, just in the coming days, because we're trying to really accelerate the tempo of the deliveries, recognizing, as I said before, the delay put Ukraine in a hole, and we're trying to help them dig out of that hole as rapidly as possible.
PDAs every week now, or even faster?
How we do the drawdown is a little bit less of the central issue than what the size of it is and what the sequence of actual deliveries are. So I'm not going to suggest that there'll be a drawdown every week. What I am going to suggest is that the level of intensity being exhibited right now in terms of moving stuff is at a 10 out of 10. I spoke this morning along with Secretary Austin and Chairman Brown with our counterparts in Ukraine, General Syrskyi, Minister Umerov, and Andriy Yermak. We spoke for 90 minutes. It was a detailed conversation about the situation on the front, about the capabilities that they are most in need of, and a real triage effort to say, get us this stuff this fast so that we can be in a position to effectively defend against the Russian onslaught. And so at the highest levels in our government, we are engaged with the highest levels of theirs to be able to ensure that we're doing everything humanly possible, both ourselves and our allies who are surging equipment as well, to get it there to the front lines.
Can I follow up on an Israel question? Sorry. Secretary Blinken said yesterday that Israel could be, quote, holding the bag on an enduring insurgency. I'm curious whether would Israel be holding that bag alone? In other words, is there any concern, or are you concerned that Israel's ongoing prosecution of the war using U.S. weapons is going to help Hamas cultivate kind of a new generation of people who will be, targeting U.S. interests and attacking Americans?
Look, we have painful experience in counterinsurgency campaigns, fighting terrorists in urban environments and populated areas, and we know.
Welcome. You're tuned in to Channel 1 Atlanta News. I'm Stephen AI, your digital news anchor. Thanks for choosing us as your news source. Here's a glimpse at what's making headlines this half hour.
Completely, and where will that smoke be blowing next? We'll have the answers. And the strongest solar storm in decades made for a spectacular light show in the skies over much of the U.S. this weekend. The Aurora Borealis could be seen as far south as Alabama, dazzling millions with colorful curtains of light. We'll look back at this once-in-a-lifetime wonder. It's all right now on Fox Weather Now. Hey, good Monday afternoon, everybody. As always, thank you for being here with us on Fox Weather. Right now, it's 3 o'clock on the East Coast, noon out west. I'm Ian Oliver, and this is Fox Weather Now. Right now, it's all eyes back on Texas, where we have more severe storms firing up. These will all be marching east as we move on through the evening. Lots of lightning with the storms, too. You may have seen a live picture from Houston, about 1,300 cloud-to-ground lightning strikes across the metro area just in the last 15 minutes. So these storms are producing a lot of lightning, and farther back to the west, we've got wind and some hail in the mix, too. There is the live picture from Houston. Visibility is obviously poor. That's as this heavy rain, there's a flash of lightning right there, continues to work through the metro area, and there are stronger storms still back to the west. Those are going to need to work on through, and with that, in addition to the severe weather and the lightning threat, we've got some flooding concerns over the next several hours and through much of this week ahead, as there's another storm system in the extended forecast. Let's get you updated on where we stand right now with all these storms. There's a live picture from Houston, left side. You saw that. Right side of your screen is Panama City, northern parts of the state of Florida. We know how we closed out last week with awful storms that moved through, producing tornadoes. Yeah, we've had some powerful complexes of storms.
There is one new severe thunderstorm warning for Texas.
Several hours from early this morning right on through the day today. There's the severe weather threat moving forward. So you've got this, which I mentioned is what we've been watching throughout the day. Now this next complex of storms developing. We've got a handful of severe thunderstorm warnings there. With time, these will cross the Sabine River, eventually the Mississippi River, and do something awfully similar to what we've seen play out over the last 12 to 18 hours. So that is where a little bit of the flooding threat comes in, too, and we'll talk more about that coming up. Here's Houston. You could see how bad the visibility is. That is a sub-severe cluster of storms moving on through, but still heavy rain, lots of lightning, of course, and some wind gusts. Farther back to the west, boom, you've got that complex along and east of 37 and also south of 10. So east of San Antonio, a few of these, though, have that considerable damage tag. That's just off to the north of Beeville, east of I-37, for hail up to around the size of golf balls. Look at this in Houston. This is what I was talking about. Just in this box that you see on your screen, that's about 1,300 cloud-to-ground lightning strikes, some directly over downtown and south, but the main density of them back toward Katy, Texas, down to Rosenberg. These are going to need to pivot through the city as we move through the next, call it 20, 30 minutes. So very heavy rain and all that lightning. Lightning doesn't make a storm severe, but it certainly represents a hazard. I would think with rain that heavy, most folks will be indoors, but just an additional something to be mindful of. There's a severe thunderstorm watch. We've got this in effect because we're thinking over the next several hours, conditions will be favorable to produce more storms like we just showed you. Big rainmakers, lots of lightning, large hail, and the damaging wind gusts. But those aren't the only threats, as I mentioned, associated with these storms. We got meteorologist Adam Klotz with us this afternoon. The rain, Adam, we've talked about this a lot over the last several days and weeks, but this is another round of it.
It's just been so active that obviously there's nowhere left for all this water to go. So when we're talking about the big storms you were just talking about that ultimately are going to be sweeping across the entire
There is
Gulf
one new
Coast,
severe
you start to
thunderstorm
see
warning
a
for
3 out of 4
Texas.
here, so pretty high on a flood risk, particularly from New Orleans over towards PCB.
Yeah, they make that semicircle right along the Gulf Coast, and as they do so, the rain rates are pretty impressive. We're seeing that right now in Houston.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something we're going to be tracking all the way till tomorrow morning, but this is just one round of what will be rounds, unfortunately, of rain here. You see that round you're currently tracking now moving out. You start getting into the middle and the back half of the week, and you see another round of rain ultimately develop, running over, in some cases, pretty much the exact same spots. The ground's already saturated, and we're talking about multiple storms here moving through.
Yeah, last several weeks, we've talked about so many 1-2 punches moving over the same areas. This isn't as bad as that because you get that little lull the middle of the week, but the late week storm is kind of a rinse and repeat, just like what we're seeing.
And we just ran this all the way until Sunday, and there's still storms moving on through. So with that many days of rain, ultimately, what are we talking about? All the way from Houston getting to Savannah, you're talking about, in some cases, 3 to 5 inches of rain. So a ton of rain here over the next week.
Yeah, it's something like I-35 all the way to I-4 in Florida. You got this massive corridor of rain. You would think, I mean, right now in Texas, there are many rivers that are still in flood stage, and now you get all this rain on top of it. It only extends the hazard.
Peanuts! Leave the Brazil.
For now, they're mainly along the coast. I would not be surprised if ultimately these get a little further inland as well, just the amount of rain we're talking about as we continue to watch this. You get into Thursday and Friday, and this is that new system we were talking about. Suddenly, you're talking about areas a little further back off towards the west, but Houston, just south of Dallas, and then still including New Orleans is the spot that could see some flooding.
Yeah, once again, I-35, the Sabine River, the lower Mississippi, all the way over into the state of Mississippi. Yeah, the likelihood that we see more flooding by the end of the week. Canada's wildfire season has erupted to a strong start. There are nearly 50 active fires north of the border. Thousands of people have been forced from their homes with smoke from several fires wafting into the northern United States, and Minnesota is getting the worst of it. That's where the first red alert for air quality is in effect. That's the first time we've seen that this year. Sensitive groups, including children, older adults, and those with respiratory concerns should avoid being outside for too long. That smoke, though, is expected to clear out a bit as we move through the day and into tomorrow. You might remember when it looked like this back in New York City. That was last year, thanks to smoke from wildfires in eastern Canada. And conditions like this lasted for several days last summer, but the worst of it came in early June. We got Fox Weather's Kiana Lewis with us tracking the wildfire smoke this time around. Kiana, that was especially extended. This isn't expected to be.
Not this go round. I think this go round is going to be pretty quick. We see this kind of clear out for the northern tier of the U.S. by, I say, the middle to end of week. But until then, we are watching the air quality very closely. This looks very similar to how things kind of kicked off in Canada with their wildfire season last year. So we're going to keep a close eye on things. Right now we have about 45 active wildfires. So far, 559,000 acres have been burned, mainly situated a little farther off towards the west and north of the U.S. border. But a lot of that smoke continues to filter in as we go through the course of today. And I think the worst smoke, or the most dense smoke, will happen as we head into early tomorrow morning. We're going to watch areas like Duluth, Minneapolis, all the way as far south as Iowa. Omaha could see some of that very, very thick, dense smoke. And it may look very much like this before all is said and done. That veil over parts of Minneapolis. Ian talked about how this is the worst air quality we've seen so far this year. With that being said, limit the time that you spend outdoors. Definitely keep a close eye on the elderly or the small children as they're out and about today as well. When we look at some of the air quality alerts that are still in place, I mentioned as far south as Iowa, we have areas like Mason City, Fort Dodge. We head over towards Minneapolis, that's under that air quality alert as well. And most of central Wisconsin, including Madison and La Crosse. So a couple areas here will see the worst of the air quality, at least over the next, say, 24 to maybe 48 hours, Ian, and then we start to see things kind of rebound. Minneapolis, for example, has seen unhealthy since the start of last night, so really hoping to see this kind of filter out and thin out as we head through the next 24 hours.
Yeah, Kiana, hopefully not a sign of things to come. People all around the world could see the beautiful colors of the aurora lights this weekend. Vibrant reds like this filled the skies in parts of Florida, northern Florida on Saturday. The aurora's vibrant colors could be seen across the U.S. from Seattle over to Tennessee. This is the strongest geomagnetic storm to hit Earth in decades, and it came with absolutely stunning views. If you were on social media this weekend, you're probably aware of this. A Fox Weather correspondent, Katie Byrne, joins us from just outside Philly in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Katie, did you get a glimpse of this? It's all anybody was talking about. Of course, the night that I had the opportunity to see it in New York City, cloudy.
You know, it was the same exact situation for us here, Ian. All across Philly and in most of the suburbs, people stayed up all night but weren't able to see anything because of all that cloud cover. I know one town over in Bridgeport, Pennsylvania, which isn't that far from here. It's only about 15 minutes away. The police department, they stayed up late and they were able to see some things, a little bit of green, but nothing like some of the stunning visuals that we've seen come in. When you look at some of these pictures, it will blow your mind. This all started up on Friday night when really the storm pushed the lights much further south than normal. That's what surprised a lot of people. So people who live all the way down in Florida were able to see this. And you mentioned the red hues, but there were also pictures of purple, green, yellow, pink hues, all coming from the northern lights lighting up the sky. And the best viewing spots for stargazers seem to be far away from city lights.
You never know where it's going to pop up at, really. So we're just kind of lucky that we're getting such a good view of it.
We've never seen the Aurora Borealis before, and so I thought, hey, if I can see it from here, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it could have been a once-in-a-lifetime experience for some of the people who were able to see this. And a lot of Americans were able to see it all across the country. But we know this all happened because of a massive sunspot, the width of 17 Earths, spewing solar flares, according to NOAA. And NOAA warned that a level 5 solar storm like this could cause power grid problems and issues with high-frequency communications. Elon Musk did post on X over the weekend that Starlink satellites were under a lot of pressure, but they held up against the storm. And FEMA, we spoke with them this morning, they say they didn't get any reports of significant impacts, but they're, of course, monitoring any possible developments in the coming days, because we know there are some things to look out for. NOAA says that
Saturday and Saturday night. Highs in the lower 80s. Thunderstorms. Lows in the lower 60s. In the lower 80s. Monday and Monday night, mostly clear. Sunday scattered showers and thunderstorms. Highs in the mid-80s and thunderstorms. Lows in the lower 60s. Highs in the lower 80s. For more detailed weather, water, and climate information, please visit our website at weather.gov/Atlanta and thunderstorms. Here is the hazardous weather outlook. This hazardous weather outlook is for portions of north and central Georgia. For today and tonight, a couple isolated severe thunderstorms are possible in central Georgia today or tonight. The primary hazard with any storms should be damaging wind gusts. And now the extended outlook for the period Tuesday through Sunday. Isolated severe thunderstorms may develop in Georgia Tuesday afternoon and evening. where storms occur, the hail and damaging wind gusts will be the main concerns. Additional thunderstorm activity may occur Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday. Locally heavy rainfall may produce isolated flooding and/or rising river and stream levels in the region through Sunday. Spotter. Submitting storm reports through the web by going to weather.gov/Atlanta. The current time is 3:12 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Here are the 3 p.m. weather observations from around the area. At Atlanta, it was cloudy. The temperature was 65 degrees. Dew point 57 degrees. Relative humidity 75%. Wind east at 8 miles an hour. Pressure was 29.97 inches and rising. Around Atlanta, at Chamblee, it was cloudy and 64. Wind calm. At Marietta, it was cloudy and 67. Wind east at 12. At Mableton, it was cloudy and 66. Wind east at 6. At Peachtree City, with light rain, it was 65. Wind southeast at 6, gusting to 22. At Lawrenceville, it was cloudy and 64. Wind northeast at 6. At Kennesaw, it was cloudy and 65. Wind east at... At Covington, it was cloudy and 64. Wind southeast at 9. At Monroe, with light rain, it was 65. Wind northeast at 6. Elsewhere around the region, at Athens, it was cloudy and 65. Wind east at 8. At Gainesville, it was cloudy and 62. Wind east at 8. At Macon, with light rain, it was 63. Wind southeast at 6. At Columbus, with light rain, it was 64. Wind south at 16 gusting to 23. At Birmingham, cloudy and 66. Wind southeast at 9. At Chattanooga, it was cloudy and 64. Wind southeast at 7. At Asheville, it was cloudy and 64. Wind south at 10. At Augusta, it was cloudy and 69. Wind east at 5. At St. Simon's Island, with light rain, it was 75. Wind southeast at 15, gusting to 23. Here is the official forecast from your National Weather Service for the Atlanta listening area. Tonight, showers likely, mainly this evening. Near steady temperature in the lower 60s. Southeast winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Chance of rain 70%. Tuesday, showers and a chance of thunderstorms in the morning. Then showers and thunderstorms likely in the afternoon. Highs in the mid-70s.
The Midwest, but they're in problematic spots. One is moving into Milwaukee, and we've got another that's developed and turned severe just back to the west of the Chicago metro area. So there you go. Let's get you the radar, show you the coverage of these. There's the one that's moving through Milwaukee with some hail possible and mainly some gusty winds up to about 60 miles per hour. And then there's this one just off to the north of Interstate 80. Yeah, you've got another severe thunderstorm in this complex that has developed, a scattered coverage of storms drifting toward Lake Michigan. So for folks in Chicago, be on alert. Joliet right now, you've got storms working through, and these are drifting into Chicagoland. So we'll keep an eye on what's happening farther off to the north. But then you look at the coverage of what's playing out down in Texas and along the Gulf Coast. We've had strong storms throughout the day today. Mobile Bay and points east from there. Right now, east of San Antonio, we got a handful or a couple now active severe thunderstorm warnings. These have been producing big hail up to the size of golf balls, both sides, both flanks of Victoria, also right along I-10 and points south. That's another severe thunderstorm warning. Fayette and Lavaca counties for wind gusts that could approach or even exceed 60 miles per hour. We've been seeing little features embedded within these. And then you have this happening right now in Houston. This is an absolute light show. You can see that picture below me. You just saw a flash of lightning. Let's take that full screen if we can. We got a live picture of what's happening in Houston. It's torrential rain. We're talking about rain rates 1 to 3 inches per hour. We're up into tropical downpour range at that point. Let's go there. Let's bring in Fox 26 Houston meteorologist Ramisha Shade to talk more about what's happening there, both with severe weather and some flooding concerns. Ramisha, this is something above you right now, not severe necessarily, but torrential rain and just an incredible amount of lightning.
You are right, Ian. We are being inundated by this torrential rain. It is coming.
I think we might have lost Ramisha. We'll work to get her back, but you heard the very beginning of the message. Big time rain amounts, 1 to 3 inches per hour. We had measured the amount of lightning. This is in 15 minutes time. More than 1,300 cloud to ground lightning strikes, almost 1,400 in the box around the Houston metro area. And these storms, for the time being, are sub-severe. So yes, you've got this whole swath, and look at the density of the lightning strikes in through here. This has kind of a middle of the summer look to it, and these dew points very close to the Gulf Coast are representative of something that you would see more so into the middle of the summer. There you go right here with the heavy rain across the Houston metro area, points farther back to the west. That's where we have the severe weather. The atmosphere in some of these places, it got to be a bit worked over when you look at the amount of rain that's coming down across the Houston metro area. That being said, that's the cluster of storms still developing farther back to the west that we'll be watching moving something like this through the evening and the overnight period, bringing more severe weather potential to those areas along the immediate Gulf Coast and points north from there. So if you live on the Gulf Coast, we're getting to that point of the year when it starts raining this hard and it feels like it's a tropical system. This is one of those events, and you've got 2 of them as we move forward through the next several days. And if only that rain could swing up across the northern tier and even farther off to the north from there, where Canada's wildfire season is roaring back to life. The Parker Lake fire in northeastern Canada began Friday and tripled
Americans, for families, whether it is Big Pharma, fighting Big Pharma, lowering health care costs, making sure that we go after cooperation as you hear us talk about junk fees. Those are the ways that we want to move forward. That's what our focus is.
So we increase taxes to pay the debt?
But let's be really, really clear, right? On billionaires and big corporations, who Warren Buffett himself said, as you started asking me about Warren Buffett, he says that they are undertaxed. And that is something that the president agrees on. And he believes if we are able to do that, to tax corporation and billionaires, that would pay for his investments in America and cut the deficit by $3 trillion. That is something the president has been very clear about since day one.
One more, if I could, on China and the tariffs that are coming. So in July of 2019, then candidate Biden said that tariffs on China are abusive policy. Has the president changed his mind and now believes tariffs work?
So look, I'm going to be really mindful. I'm going to let in due order. You'll hear directly from the president, directly from us. So don't want to get ahead of that. Jake said it really well when he was here. We have always had concerns on China's unfair trade policies. We've been very clear about that. And the last administration, when they did the trade deal with China, what it did is it failed to increase American exports or boost manufacturing. That is not something the president wants to see. He has been doing the opposite, making sure that American manufacturing is created here, right here in America. And so that is something that he has been very focused. He says he wants to protect American workers, protect businesses, American business. That's what the president wants to do. He spoke about this when he was in Pittsburgh not too long ago, talking about making sure that we see fair business practices as it relates to American workers and American businesses. So don't want to get ahead of that, but we've been very, very clear on how we move forward on these types of practices as trade practices and what we want to see, and that is the framework. As Jake Sullivan said here moments ago, that we move forward in.
So he now believes tariffs work.
I'm just going to be really mindful, not get ahead of what we're about to announce soon. What we have been really clear about is protecting workers, protecting businesses, and we have called out China's unfair trade policies, and so we're going to continue to do that. Go ahead, Phil, in the back.
Thank you. There's new reporting in the Wall Street Journal that found that the FDIC director, Martin Grunberg, disrespected, disparaged, and treated unfairly officials there, and that he was known to be someone who could not control his temper. Obviously, President Biden said early on in his administration that he would fire on the spot anyone who bullied or unfairly belittled a coworker. So has the president seen those reports? And if those reports prove to be accurate, will he take action?
So I don't have any personal announcements to make at this time. The FDIC administrator, chairman to be exact, apologized and spoke to this. And so certainly I would send you there. The FDIC is an independent agency, so would refer you to them as to anything else coming out from the FDIC on this particular matter. But I just don't have any policy personnel.
There is one news of your thunderstorm warning for Texas.
Green, I know you don't want to get ahead of the announcement, but can you just more broadly talk about the role that tariffs play here in trying to balance protecting American workers versus consumers? Because tariffs are often a tax to consumers. So how can you ensure Americans that with more tariffs, it doesn't come with higher costs?
So going to let the announcement speak for itself, but what I can say about what China has played here, they've played by a different set of rules, and this is what we know to be clear, and it has been unfair and anti-competitive economic practices. For example, forcing technology transfers and stealing intellectual property, distorting market forces with unrivaled subsidies, barriers, and regulations, flooding markets with artificially cheap products to wipe out the competition. And that's what we have seen from China with their unfair trade policies. We have done the opposite here. And what we have tried to do is invest in our Invest in America agenda is $860 billion invested by the private sector in manufacturing and clean energy. Nearly 800,000 manufacturing jobs created right here in the U.S. So you see the president's investment in America. This is what his agenda has been all about. And as I stated moments ago, when Trump administration, when they went forward with their trade deal, what it did is it showed that that deal with China, it failed to increase American export and boost manufacturing. We have tried to change that, reverse that, and so I want to be mindful. I'm not going to get into an upcoming potential announcement, and so I'm going to be really mindful there. But we are all about, and this president has been very clear, protecting American workers, protecting American businesses, and we're going to continue to do that under this administration.
And can you just talk about the president's preparations for the upcoming commencement speech at Morehouse, and does he plan to address the concerns of some students and faculty who have conflicting views about the president being there?
So a couple of things there. The president's going to continue to work on his speech with his senior advisors. That's what he's going to do all week. He sees this moment as a very pivotal moment, an important moment to a lot of these young graduates. Let's not forget some of these graduates missed out on their graduation from high school because of the pandemic, and this is going to be a celebration for them, an opportunity to have a commencement, to have a graduation that they sadly missed out on. So the president has done these type of commencements. He did 2 of them last year. He's done them throughout his as a vice president, as a senator. He knows how important it is, not just to the graduates, but the families, the people who love them, and so you'll see themes, obviously, in his commencement speech. He will give an uplifting remarks on what's to come.
There is one news of your thunderstorm warning for
to,
Texas.
but also acknowledging, what's ahead, the difficulties that are ahead. And look, as you started your question to me about how people are feeling, we've been very clear about that too. We understand how deeply personal this moment is for many Americans across the country. We've been very clear about that. We understand that. That's why we've had conversations with members of the community that's affected by this. We've had conversation with the Muslim Americans, Palestinian Americans, Arab Americans. The president has, White House officials here have. They've traveled to states across the country to have those.
Again, a confirmed tornado on the ground in downtown Conyers. It's a very dangerous and life-threatening weather event. Get into the interior section of your house, away from windows or a basement if you have. And there's the debris right there in the Millstead area near the Rockdale Medical Center. Right. Channel 1 Atlanta.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm, a new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
Welcome. You're tuned into Channel 1 Atlanta News. I'm Stephen AI, your digital news anchor. Thanks for choosing us as your news source. Here's a glimpse at what's making headlines this half hour.
The rain that's moving through Houston right now still has to work through that area. Plus, that next developing complex of storms will be rolling through all of these spots. We've been keeping an eye on the Houston camera, too, because across the metro, we measured about 1,300 cloud-to-ground lightning strikes in 15 minutes. So a very electric setup over the Houston metro area. Let's get you updated on where we stand with the Fox Weather Alert as we track what we're expecting to be some dangerous storms over the next several hours, not just because of the severe weather concerns, but also because of the amount of water that these storms are going to put down. Got a couple live pictures right there. One, what you saw in Houston, another from PCB, Panama City Beach down in Florida. Yeah, you've got some of the cloud cover around. There's heavy rain, pockets of it still around, and more to come as we move through the next 12 to 18 hours or so. So this is more or less closer to the end of one cluster, one complex of storms, and another one that's still just getting started in Texas. The problem with this one is that it does something like this through the overnight period, this evening and overnight, and moves right over some of the same places that just got soaked. And
there is one new special marine warning
that's been more or less incessant over the last 3 or 4 weeks. This is what's happening in Texas. So yes, you've got couple of severe thunderstorms, one right over Victoria. It includes Victoria County. That one was just issued, but look at what's happening across the northern part of the Houston metro area. That's Harris County. It also includes parts of Liberty and Montgomery. I-69, I-45, and points east from there. It's this whole zone down through Pasadena, down through Pearland. Yeah. All of those lightning icons indicating what I was talking about, cloud-to-ground lightning strikes in this box, which is larger now than the Houston metro area, over 1,500 cloud-to-ground lightning strikes. And within some of these areas where you see the greatest density of lightning, it's where the rain is the heaviest, where we've been sampling, and the Weather Service has mentioned rain rates here anywhere from 1 to as much as 3 inches per hour. Doesn't have to rain all that long when you have rain rates that are that heavy, and flash flooding can happen quickly. So that's what we have happening. There's Beaumont, Texas, for reference. This is just off to the north of I-10, but you look down range of this upstream, and you've got heavy rain with the severe thunderstorm warning and more of the stronger storms that are fired back to the west, all of which will have to work through some of these same areas as we move forward through the next several hours. So the severe weather threat is clear. It runs until later this evening for this whole zone as that new complex fires. This is primarily going to be for strong wind gusts, 60+ miles per hour, large hail. Outside chance of a few tornadoes, but that risk is far lesser than what we've seen, thankfully, a lot over the last several days. But the atmosphere is primed to produce some of that severe weather. You see it on future radar, the coverage of this on the increase in the short term. And then from here, that storm motion that I was mentioning, rolling right along the Gulf Coast, crossing the Sabine River, the lower Mississippi, Mobile Bay. Again, that's an area that got hit hard earlier this morning. Same story through the overnight and into the early part of your Tuesday. You've got that now complex of storms rolling across the Florida Panhandle up into the Big Bend, and that heavy rain persists. That heavy rain becomes increasingly problematic. We got meteorologist Adam Klotz with us this afternoon with the details on that. It's relentless. You've got rain happening now, and some of these places it's been all day, and this next sprawling coverage of it moves into the same spots.
Yeah, it's like there's so much moisture, and there's been so much moisture across this area, moisture in the atmosphere, and then that has just caused round after round of rain, unfortunately, across this region. This is what you're talking about, though. That rain that you're tracking here today moves on out, and you hardly get a break at all as you're getting into tomorrow evening, tracking that off into the southeast. And before you know it, another round of rain ultimately forms in a very similar area, again, works itself around the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, the Gulf is so warm already. So you get all this evaporation, there's so much moisture to feed into these storm systems. And in spots when you get an onshore flow like what we have this week in Florida, Adam, the dew points are in the mid 70s, upper 70s in spots.
You're going to stand outside and think it's going to rain, right? It's going to be that humid, that nasty, and ultimately it really will rain. These are some really big numbers across parts of the country that don't need any more rain at this point. But from Houston, so talking about East Texas, all the way around the Florida Big Bend, and then stretching north, even getting up towards Atlanta and Savannah, you're talking 2 to 3 inches. But in reality, a lot of these places are going to see 5 inches of rain or more.
Yeah, that is a lot of orange on the map from two systems, too many in some of these areas in 1 week, especially when you consider this. These levels have been dropping with some of the rivers in Texas and into Louisiana especially, but many are still up in moderate major flood stage.
Yeah, and we're going to be suddenly adding all this additional water to these. It's going to keep going up, and the spots that you're used to flooding are going to flood, but maybe even some of the spots you're maybe not as used to flooding are still going to be flooding out there for the next few days.
Some of the pain of it too comes in. We've been talking about this for weeks, and when you get rain like this, it just extends that hazard for more and more time.
Exactly, and it's going to be a hazard at least for the week ahead.
This rain would be much more useful much farther off to the north. Canada's wildfire season has erupted to a strong start. There are nearly 50 large active fires north of the border. Thousands of people have been forced from their homes. Smoke from several fires has wafted into the northern United States. Minnesota, one of the spots getting the worst of it. Check out this time lapse. Looks beautiful until it doesn't. It gets milky fast. That's where their first red alert for air quality of the year is in effect. Sensitive groups, including children, older adults, and those with respiratory issues, they should avoid being outside for extended periods of time. That smoke, though, thankfully, is expected to clear out as we move on through the next 24 to 48 hours. You might remember this, though. Hard to forget. It looked like this in New York City last June, thanks to smoke from Canadian wildfires. They were working through their worst season on record. Kiana Lewis is tracking the wildfire smoke this time around. Kiana, this is not that, but folks are saying still not this again.
Oh, yeah, you know, I even thought that coming into the door this morning. Definitely watching some of this wildfire smoke kind of take over parts of Canada will bring back those memories from just last June. So we'll watch that very closely. As Ian mentioned, not the case this go round. We do have about 45 active wildfires. They're well off towards the north and west, moving back into Canada. Haven't even jumped over that state line just yet. It's more so the smoke that's filtering around these low pressure and high pressure systems and Canada that's filtering this as far south as areas like Iowa, back towards Minneapolis, seeing some of the worst of the smoke, and moving into the UP of Michigan. So we're watching that through the course of, say, the next 24 hours. I think by midday Tuesday, we start to see some of that dense smoke kind of filter out, and then it gets much lighter towards the end of the week as well. But until then, we do have air quality alerts that remain in place. This is going to be for the course of today. Northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, Minneapolis is one of those cities in that threat or that alert. We take you over towards central Wisconsin from Marshfield down through La Crosse and moving south into Madison. Those are going to be the areas that we could see this smoke filter as far south into the U.S. When we look at the air quality index, that does fall into that unhealthy category. We watch that in the red from Wisconsin back towards Minneapolis or Minnesota. Looking at an area like Minneapolis, I think it sits right along that unhealthy to sensitive group for the next couple of hours or so. So we'll watch that very closely. And for Minneapolis, we actually saw this in that unhealthy category since last night. So starting to see it kind of filter back to the orange, that unhealthy for sensitive groups, is going to be somewhat of an improvement. We see that through the course of, say, the next 24 hours, Ian, and hopefully we're all good towards the middle of the week.
Yeah, certainly hope so. Hey, check this out. A geomagnetic storm, the strongest that we've seen in about 20 years, gave millions a stunning view of the aurora borealis.
People living in areas as far south as Texas and Florida were able to catch a glimpse of the phenomenon and see the night sky glow.
And we won't be expecting another event like this in quite some time. We're going to be seeing that over the course of some time. But since this is going to be unusual, it occurs about an 11-year solar cycle.
Yeah, we're right at the end of that 11-year solar cycle, and boy, did millions of people take advantage of that.
What a bang.
Yeah.
If you logged onto any social media,
Oh, I saw it this weekend.
I was jealous. Did you see it at all?
I saw Brandy's, some of her images. Oh, no, I didn't see it in person this time. Not this time either.
Well, you're like, oh, I saw it in Iceland, so I need to see it. Did you?
No, social media gives me FOMO every weekend, and it did so again this weekend. I didn't see it. I didn't see it.
To be fair, too, this is a look back at the solar storm conditions, which got up to that G5, the highest on the scale, back over the weekend. That was using long exposure, so this wasn't naked eye stuff, and a lot of what we saw was time lapse too. That makes me sound increasingly salty about it as well. This was
That makes me feel better about it.
Yeah.
Because I had heard that people said, yeah, I took this picture of it. It looks really cool. It didn't look that cool to my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there were places where you could see it great, but I think in some
definitely
cases, it's just the
far
exposure.
north. Yeah, you need that exposure. Like, remember I was telling you need like that night camera filter to see it through the camera. So
this is what happened. We had this big ejection, a CME coming from the sun. Those charged particles run into the Earth's magnetic field. They get directed toward the poles. But because this was such an intense storm, so powerful, they made it into southern latitudes that you don't typically see things like this. And boy, did it sound like people took advantage of it. Adam, we missed the eclipse too. So we're just like, we're the FOMO brothers over here.
I guess we gotta travel for it, but I like it when things come to me.
Spain 2026 for the eclipse.
Yeah.
And
a field trip.
Somewhere else, farther off to the north for the northern lights. Hey, Fox Weather is your Hurricane HQ. The start of the Atlantic season is less than 3 weeks away. The ocean water in the main development region of the Atlantic is at record high temperatures, and we got a La Nina on the way. We'll look ahead to what's expected to be
There is one new severe thunderstorm warning for
when
Texas.
Fox Weather Now comes right back. But first, a check of that regional forecast.
Are you over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days? I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. Call now for this free book on maximizing your income in retirement. Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers from one of the nation's leading financial firms. That's right, free. This book reveals little-known truths about annuities in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now because we're about to offer you